Right then, and we are live. That excitement of broadcast. Jessica Cecilia Costa,
Yay.
welcome to the show. Good to see
Thank
you.
you so much, Michael. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So we'll introduce you properly in a second. We'll just sort of shoot the breeze for a couple of minutes for a couple of people hopefully turn up and see us. I'm very bad at the whole social media thing. I love podcasts. That's why I started it. My second greatest love is probably emails, really well written emails, even
Yep.
marketing ones, but only like about 1 in 100. Most of them are horrible. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So where are you coming to us from today, Jessica?
So I am in Los Angeles, California.
Excellent. Early in the morning there, or mid-morning.
Yeah.
It's evening
Yeah.
here in London, England. I'm imagining you're getting the better weather there because it's kind of cold and horrible and
I gotta tell you, it's a little warm right now. I
too
wouldn't
warm.
mind if we could, yeah, if we could
Yeah.
drop a few degrees off. I like, 70, 75 is kind of my favorite. So when it starts creeping into the 80s and 90s, it's a little bit too much, but it doesn't
Damn.
snow here.
Yeah, I
So
was going to
there's
say,
that.
but you may be in the wrong place if you like cold weather. You could always
Well,
swap. I'm happy to visit LA
yeah,
for a couple of months.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm originally from New York and I left there 10 years ago because it snows there.
Yes.
So this is like the best option.
Yeah, makes sense. A bit
Yeah.
too warm, better than a bit too cold. Yeah, I hear you on that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, excellent. It's a bit like for my old profession in music theatre that I used to what is it but it's the 20 December the 24th. I'm longing to be up north. Is that like white dreaming of a white Christmas thing because it never snows in LA. So I guess that's the only time you might miss it, right? I mean, I certainly wouldn't miss the cold weather here. Anyway, so enough talking. Shooting breezes. I think we should get into the meat of the matter today. So we are talking about
Oh,
email
I
list
don't know if
building.
that's me or you, but you're cutting out for me.
Okay, interesting. I don't think so. Let me see. How am I going to check this end? Let me just check my internet connection and make sure it's okay.
Yeah, I have full Wi-Fi.
Me too. 1 second. So about this, folks, the dangers of live. Did a
Yeah,
live recording yesterday on CMAR where my host had horrible internet. It also happened to be in California, but it's the north end of California, so probably the wrong end, As you see here. Okay, looking like full internet, and maybe just Zoom getting busy and doing weird things. You never quite know with Zoom, do you?
for sure. All right, you sound good to me now.
Maybe a temporary glitch. It's looking good. So, yeah, let's do this thing. So what we're going to do, folks, a live recording of the podcast. If you've got any questions, do pop them into the comments. I'm not big on social media and interactive stuff, one of the things I need to work on. But today we're in my comfort zone, which is more email, and I love that area. Still, I think, vastly underused. So we'll get into the formal content recording in a second. In fact, let's just do this thing right now. Ladles and jelly spoons, boys and girls, welcome to the 10K Collective podcast, the place to be for 6, 7, and 8-figure Amazon sellers. Today I'm here with Jessica Totilo Costa, of e-commerce badassery, and e-commerce badassery is e-commerce and email marketing strategy for scrappy entrepreneurs, people who are willing to get their hands dirty to do some work. I like the vibe already. So Jessica, warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. Excited to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. So we're going to talk about email building in the context of that sort of weird hinterland that people often find them in, which is moving from Amazon towards their own direct-to-consumer site, Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, whatever it is. And that sort of awkward hinterland that people are in for a while, and how to sort of build a brand without just turning your back on Amazon nor just getting stuck on it. So interesting topic. It's something that keeps coming up a lot with the guys in the masterminds that I run who are doing serious money on Amazon and now want to start to shore that up, protect themselves against suspension, potentially add value to the business. So before we get into that, just tell us a little bit about your background and where you come from, how you got started in this game.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I've been in the retail game for 20 plus years. I used to sleep in my new shoes as a little girl, which is probably like not important, but really does set the stage for everything else I've done. And I had my own brick and mortar boutique as well back in the day before I moved to LA. And really, when I was in school, like social media wasn't a thing, all this digital advertising wasn't a thing, but I knew I didn't want to get left behind. So I really just started to dig in and learn a lot on my own, very self taught. And then right before I started e-commerce badassery, I was at a retail company running their e-commerce. And for the first 3 years, I was the only employee, but we were doing 7 figures. It was a really stressful time. I cried a lot at that job, but I learned so much. And really, I loved what I did, but I was kind of over the corporate rat race. And I just saw this space online where there was a lot for kind of the super beginner, right? Like, here's how to set up your Shopify store. And then there was a lot for the super big brands, but there wasn't a ton for the people in the middle. And that's where I really wanted to kind of insert myself. And a lot of the people that I work with, they don't necessarily have a retail background or an e-commerce background. They just created a product or they wanted to get into it because it's, passive income in quotes here. But they didn't really know kind of the operations behind it or the marketing behind it. And so that's where I really come in to support them. And it's the best job I've had so far.
Excellent. Sounds like you've earned your spurs. I mean, it sounds like being the only employee in a seven-figure business sounds a pretty tough apprenticeship. But I guess you learn a lot. It's okay. I remember
Yeah.
speaking to some doctors once, and I used to teach music a lot, and they had this. I was speaking to two doctors who were married, and they were just both saying about in medical training in the UK, it used to be you had this junior house doctor position, probably similar in the US, I guess, where you basically work 12-hour shifts. And they said it's brutal, but you learn a lot quickly when things are
Yeah.
brutal. So I guess you've earned your spurs, and I guess you can also save some pain for other people, so they don't
Yeah.
have to recreate everything you did. So let's talk then. You've obviously, by the way, I love the positioning. Just before we move on, that there is a lot of content for super beginners on in the Amazon space is just awash with that. You cannot move for gurus trying to sell you the fact that you're going to replace your day job in 12 months.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, for anyone listening, please don't come to me if you want to do that. I don't believe it's going to happen. I've had clients approach me by people you should know better. I don't believe in that, so don't come here, please, because that's not going to happen. So let me just put that out there. But you're absolutely right. There's loads of stuff for beginners, some of which is very dodgy, but they're still out there.
Yeah.
And there's lots for the big brands. And you're right. The people in the middle get a bit abandoned, and that's exactly who I'm trying to serve with the 10K collector, the 6, 7, 8 figure sellers. They're not yet big enterprise size, but they're not beginners either. So that's brilliant. That really fits. So let's talk about the reality of transitioning from Amazon to Shopify or whatever it is. Let's just agree, if I say Shopify, any direct-to-consumer site, folks, let's not get partisan about that. Gets boring old quickly. I don't care if you're on WooCommerce, Shopify, Magento, or whatever else, right? Just to be clear. But anyway, Shopify or other things. Tell us about the reality. What's your experience of the sort of reality checks that people coming off a marketplace like Amazon hit when they go D2C?
Yeah. That you actually have to drive your own traffic, right? I think there is this misconception, at least that is what I have seen, is that Shopify, I'm just using them specifically because they've blown up so much, but it's like people think Shopify is a marketplace and it's not. So if you have your own website, your number one job is to drive traffic to it. Now, there are tons of different ways you can do that: paid, organic, email, all that stuff, but that's your job. So, a lot of people get frustrated with, Amazon or Etsy, for example, because, oh, they're taking all of these fees. Well, those fees, right? You're paying for the traffic. It's like if you have a brick and mortar and you rent a space in a mall, you're going to pay a lot more than you would for a freestanding store because you are paying for the traffic that the mall is bringing you. So then that is the number one thing. And I am all for diversification. I don't think you should build your entire business on rented land. Like, anything can happen. You can get kicked off at Amazon tomorrow. So I do think it's important that you do both at a minimum. But just know that it's going to be a lot more work than it was to get up and running on something like Amazon or Etsy.
Yeah, good reality check. And obviously this is from somebody who's literally physically run their own retail store. you've kind of transitioned online from the offline world, and then you've helped clients
Yeah.
with both online, their own site and marketplace. I guess you've seen all sides of this. Yeah, and I would just say this, that there is more value in a direct-to-consumer site than in an FBA-based business. If you're like looking at multiples of seller discretionary earnings, profit, EBITDA, whatever preferred term it is, of the hour, it's going to be more like 7x than 3x. No, the exact multiple I can't tell you, and it's changing all the time anyway. But there's a reason for that, because it's a lot harder. So it's just the
Yeah.
same as if you've got an undefensible Amazon business, somebody can create it quickly and it'll disappear quickly. So I guess what takes some sweat to create is at least more valuable. So I guess it's one nice thing to say. So we're talking about list building for email in the context of this. I mean, how does email list building fit into this whole journey of traffic creation? I mean, for starters, how do you view email list? Is that a traffic source, or is it, how does it fit into a sort of sales funnel for you?
So it's really a little bit of both, and I think it depends a little bit on the business as well, right? I just had a client who I worked with her in the past. She's a solopreneur. She's like super overwhelmed. She has a subscription box, and we've become friends, right? So we're just kind of chatting, and I'm like, "Girl, like you got to send an email. You got to send an email." And it's always on, the back burner for her. It's the last thing she thinks about it. And then it's like, "Hey, do I sleep or do I send an email?" And so she chooses to sleep. Well, she just messaged me this morning and she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so dumb. You were so right. I sent an email and I made $1,700." So it is a communication channel, number one, but it is also a traffic channel. It's repeat traffic, sure, but that's still traffic. And more than anything, too, it's a revenue generating channel. And that's what I think people miss is we get so caught up in the acquisition of new customers, and we have to run ads and we have to be on social and we have to do this, when you could just send an email and make money from the people who already know, like, and trust you. Now, that's not to say you don't get new customers. You need that too, because running your own e-commerce website is truly a numbers game. But the power of revenue in email is insane. It has the highest ROI of any marketing channel, 40 to 1 on average. So you can't ignore it. Oh, Michael, did I lose you? I
You
wonder
did.
if I.
Sorry, I'm in
Oh,
such comfort zone on Zoom that I just use my Zoom keyboard shortcuts and they don't work on StreamYard. Sorry, I forgot I couldn't do that. Yeah, so I would say some of the sharpest minds I know in the e-commerce space are busy doing things like Facebook ads, but they're driving them to sign up for email, and then email's the nurturing and sort of, if you like,
mhm.
the middle of the funnel traffic channel. So I guess the next thing, then, once we've figured out how email fits in, the fact that it's extremely valuable, that you get a massive ROI, is still, I guess, even like it used to be 20 years ago, the money's in the list, and it still means email list in many cases. So then
Yeah.
the next question becomes, how do we build that email list? That's the $64,000 question.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So, here's the thing, right? Is I understand like when you're coming from Amazon, those are not your customers, right? You don't own that data. It's Amazon's data. They have all these rules around not being able to put inserts into your packages and things like that. So, if you're trying to make a transition, or even if you're just trying to build up what you have on Amazon anyway, is really focus on building a brand around your product. And maybe the place you start is on social media, right? So where does your customer hang out? Like, don't think about the fact whether they shop on Amazon or not. Just where does that person hang out, and start to create a presence there depending upon where they are, right? For some brands, that's going to be Instagram. For some, that's going to be Facebook. It could even be LinkedIn. You just don't know. So start there. But when it comes to, I want to actually to kind of preface this with, I don't think you should necessarily do only Amazon, only your own website. You should do both. And I think the main thing to remember is people who shop Amazon, just they shop Amazon, right? Don't worry about trying to get your Amazon customers to your e-commerce website. That's going to be so hard and not worth your time. just focus on finding new people who want your product on your own website. So that alone, if you could just focus there, is going to be a lot less stressful. And then you need to figure out, all right, cool. So I have my own site. I'm going to find new customers. I'm going to drive new traffic. How do I get their email? My first question is to you, what are you going to give them in exchange? Emails, the inbox, it's like they're inviting you into, their home. It's a very sacred space, especially these days, because every company is trying to email them about everything. And that's not to say it doesn't work, because it does, but you have to really treat it with care. So there's a few ways that are usually like my go-to for growing a list. Of course, we have the discount offer, right? Which some people are afraid to use. They think it's going to train their customers. Giving a welcome discount is not going to train your customers to wait for sales. Running sales every week is going to train them to wait, right? Whether or not that works for you is going to depend a little bit on your business, but start thinking beyond just getting the sale and think about creating a long-term relationship with them. So how else can you bring value, joy, excitement to their life? And what can you give them in exchange for that? So I like to use a skincare example. This is like I think the easiest to wrap your head around, right? And you see a lot of informational giveaways and service-based businesses, but they work for product-based businesses too. So let's say someone is looking to have, clearer, more glowy skin. So you can create content around that, and you can create a PDF, 10 ways, right, to get glowing skin. One of those 10 ways is your product. So you're giving them other value. You're telling them to get a good night's rest. You're telling them to drink more water, but then you are also telling them, use my product. So that's one way. You're essentially just giving a PDF in exchange for their email. And then my other favorite way is with a quiz. So the amazing thing about the quiz is not only are you helping the customer find the product that they are looking for faster, right? And as few clicks as you can give someone, the better on the internet, but you are also collecting more data on them that you can then use later in email marketing, in all of your marketing, really, and learn more about who your customer is and what they care about, which is really what you need to do in your business at the beginning.
Can I just say how super smart the quiz thing is? Because it's doing three things in one go. It's giving them some value. You're collecting information about them, and they're segmenting themselves. I mean, that's super smart. I really like that a lot. I have to say. Also, it's one of those things that I come across every so often. I think, oh, that's genius. And then I forget it because I just go back to the same old PDF download, which is actually harder work. And you know what else I've done? I've even bought the URLs for quizzes. I just never set them up because it's never seemed like a priority, right? I'm just fessing up all my sins here. So sell me on the quiz thing. Tell me why I've got to actually do this now.
For sure. And I'll actually give you an example of a client that I used to work with. She sells apparel. And her lead magnet was a quiz, and her whole company is all about, higher quality, longer lasting, environmentally friendly. She's a B Corp. It's all about minimalism, all of that. So she had a quiz that would essentially be, find your style, and then it would bring them to a curated assortment of product. They took it down when the pandemic hit because a lot of the questions were about travel and work. So it just felt misaligned for them. So they took it down and they just put up like a regular pop-up with a discount. It doesn't convert as well as the quiz did. Not only at the sign up, but also at the purchase afterwards. So there's one piece for you. But think about, when you're online and you're not in person, you can't have a conversation with someone, it can be really hard to figure out who they are and what they care about. So when you have the quiz, it is almost like having that two-way conversation with them, right? You're asking them a question, they're giving you the answers. So, I mean, why would you not do it? And that allows you, it's, think of it too, it's kind of a customer service play, right? Because especially if you have a wide assortment of product, you have people contacting you, well, I don't know which is the right one for me. Oh, should I get this one or should I get that one? Or they try one and it's not what they wanted, it didn't do what they thought it was going to do, so now they want to return it. But if you can take them down that path, right, through the quiz and give them exactly what it is that they need to solve the exact problem they're trying to solve, and it can limit all of that hemming and hawing back and forth with your customer service team, that's a win. Because I got to tell you, like, decreasing the number of customer service inquiries is just as important a metric in your e-commerce business as your conversion rate, because it's going to save you so much time and energy.
Love it. Wow, sounding even better than I thought. I mean, it's, yeah, and it's interesting that you had an A/B comparison with that one client, just because for different reasons than they didn't like quizzes,
Yeah.
they took it down. So that's not sort of, when you got something that's working, you don't normally experiment with turning it off. Although if you're really brave, you do. I know, had one client at one point, they were doing probably getting close to 8 figures at that point, and they turned off all their Amazon ads for about 4 weeks, or maybe it was 3 weeks, but it probably felt like a lifetime, just to see
Yeah.
what stuff needed ads and what it didn't. And I tell you what, if you've got the, the courage is the polite word, to do that, then you can learn a lot. But actually, that was a sort of unintentional test, but very, very interesting. So quizzes are where it's at. Love that very much. Now, let's talk about some of the classic mistakes people make when they're trying to convert people. So we're going to leave the traffic piece to one side. We'll revisit that because obviously huge, but let's assume that people got to your site somehow. What are the other classic mistakes people make when they're trying to build an email list and they go wrong? Things not to do, in other words.
They don't email them.
Right.
I'm just, that is the biggest mistake, is they don't email them when they get them. But when it comes to the actual building of the list, right, some of the mistakes I see are doing giveaways with products that are not related to your product whatsoever. You see this a lot on Instagram. People are giving away like iPads and all this stuff, which, cool, like, I'm going to enter that giveaway, and I don't even enter giveaways, but those people do not care about your product, right? You are just building a list of people that are never ever going to buy from you. It's not worth it. So really, just when you are building that list, go for quality over quantity. Remember that your email service providers are charging you based on how many email subscribers you have. So why do you want people who are never going to buy from you? And even a list of targeted people, 50% of them probably are never going to buy from you. So, like, don't fill it up with crap. But really, the biggest thing is not believing in the power of email and really not investing your time in it. Don't let it be the last thing on your to-do list, right? That should be your first place of communication. That is where you should be pre-launching all of your products to, giving early access for whatever deals and promos you're running. Like, those are your people. Those are the people who are going to talk about you when you're not around, because they just love you and your brand so much. Those are really the number one things.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I can understand that desperation. Like, I've tried to get various responsive things. I haven't done so much with email marketing. It's probably a good thing I hadn't thought of it, because I probably would have done it. But I've tried giving away Amazon vouchers to people to get podcast reviews and things before now. Just to get, I'm not even trying to manipulate the quality of the review. I just want to get some engagement. It doesn't work very well because I'm not really that engaged. And I could run a contest, and contests can be very, very powerful. My friend Jason Miles, who runs winningonshopify.com, is a huge believer in contests. But they are contests. They sell digital patterns for dolls, haute couture dolls clothes. How about niche? And they made a living from that for over 10 years. So the riches are really in the niches, as you say, in the States. And guess what? That they also don't give away iPads. They have contests for the sort of stuff they sell. In other words, they're getting the right kind of people on their list, and they're attracting the right kind of people. So totally hear you on that. And I guess I use email quite a bit. I necessarily do it well. I mean, we could talk about more about that piece. But let's go backwards in the funnel for a minute. And okay, so we've got use the list once you get it. But we need to talk about that probably. Quizzes are a wonderful way to build it. Love that. If you take nothing else away from this podcast, I think that's value right there. I really do. But let's talk about how we get people to the site then. So we talked about a social media presence. Obviously, going where they are makes sense. But have you got any more sort of specific strategies to approach that big old area of traffic?
For sure. You got to ask yourself first, do you have more time or do you have more money, right? Because you don't get fast and cheap. Not a thing. So either you have more time and not a lot of money, in which case you're going to focus on the organic piece. If you have more money, then just go paid. If you have a proven product already and you know product market fit and your pricing is good and all of that stuff, like just go paid if you really want quick results. It's not magic. Remember, they're only going to amplify what is already happening in your business, good or bad. So you really need to have that foundation in place first. But then when it just comes to driving traffic overall, whichever way you're going to do it, you've got new people, you've got your return customers, and don't discount either one of them, right? You're going to want to split your time between that. And that depends a little bit on your business. How long have you been around? How often do people buy your product, right? I try never to go maybe less than 70% in either direction, but it just kind of depends. It's too nuanced. So approach it that way first. And you have to, this is the other thing I see happen a lot is like this, it's not magic. You have to show up. Whatever it is that you are going to do to drive traffic, and we'll talk about that, you have to be in it every single day and working on it all of the time. There is no silver bullet. And if somebody on the internet told you that there is, they are lying to you. So I just want to clear the air on that.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I love that. I love your passion about this because, this is the person that was almost single-handedly, like Atlas, holding the world up, the 7-figure business of one employee. So I've got that image of you in my mind there, and I think that mirrors the lives of a lot of people listening. Actually, if I know my e-commerce operators, and thank you for the reality.
Yeah, it wasn't my business, but it sure did feel like it was.
Yeah.
It really
it's kind
did.
of worse. I mean, if it's your business, at least you get to sell it for a decent figure some in 5-10 years time. I mean, if you're the sole employee, you got all the weight on you. But and thank you for that. I guess that really, as you were saying, and I guess it's a really super simple point, but it's a culture shift for those of us coming off Amazon. And we're kind of addicted to the drug that Amazon feeds us, which is just constant traffic. Yes, we may have to reduce prices to get it. We may have to fight for it, but it's there, right? Whereas a website, the dangerous cricket. So I guess what you're saying is that you've got to be just focused on that the whole time and really
100%.
really hustling, as you say, scrappy entrepreneurs. All right, so we've talked about paid and free. So let's talk about the free thing first, because obviously organic, if you want to call it that. I guess that a lot of people are aware of their thin margins or thin-ish in e-commerce. They have a lot of overhead and a lot of direct costs above all, right? So how do we do that in a way that isn't going to send us crazy? Because obviously you could spend all day on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever your channel is and do nothing except put posts up. So how do we get actual traction from that?
Yeah. So there's kind of two main things I like to focus on when it comes to organic. And I am all about, I hate saying like working smarter, not harder. Like I am not about the hustle culture by any means. You need to have a life. That's why you went into business for yourself, right? Super important. So I want you to be really intentional about what you're doing and just know that organic takes more time. So you just have to be in that mindset. So the two main things I like to focus on are SEO and collaboration and getting in front of other people's audiences. Me being on Michael's podcast is me getting in front of other people's audiences, right? And you can do that in your product-based business too. And I think that we overlook this a lot because everyone just kind of wants to like hide in the back and just kind of hide behind their logo and not really have to like get out there and attach themselves to their brand. But it is so, so powerful. It's probably the fastest organic result that you will get. So SEO, right? It takes time, minimum 3 to 6 months, depending upon how long you've been in business. The longer you've been in business, the more traffic you already have, the faster you're going to see that SEO boost. It's just a lot of work up front. It is essentially free. I mean, you have to put in the time, energy, and effort in the beginning to create the content. And then if you're, going to have blog posts and things like that, to continue to do those. But the success of that like compounds over time, right? And that content that you created 3 years ago is still going to continue to bring value to you. So yes, it's a lot of work up front, but it's a long-term play. Free traffic is the best traffic, right? Like you cannot beat ranking on page 1 of Google. Even better if you can get in the top 3 spots, and just be a resource for your customers on your industry, whatever is related to your topic. A really great example of this, if people aren't really sure how to do content marketing for their business, go look at the Man Registry and Beard Brand. They do this so well. Beard Brand was actually a content company before they were a product. That's where they got their start. But then the Man Registry does a really, really good job of creating content around, being a groom, being a groomsman, all that stuff. And they hold the top spot for some of like the most basic queries, like what to get for a groomsman gift, things like that. So definitely go check them out. It's amazing. And then the collaboration piece, who find those complementary businesses that you can partner with. You don't want them to be direct competitors, right? You want them to be complementary. So they're selling another product, but they're selling it to the same person you are. And collaborate with them. What does that look like? That could be cross-posting each other on social media. That could be doing shout outs in each other's emails, which is my favorite one. That could be putting a bundle together. That could be going live together, right? There's so many ways that you can do that. You can do giveaways as long as it's your own product if you want. And maybe you get 4 or 5 people grouped together to do this. So now you're getting in front of all of these different audiences and just like amplifying your own message more than you could ever do on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I'm a bit biased towards that last piece, like, because I believe in collaboration. It's mostly people coming on my podcast channel. I do it the other way around as well. Now, this is not strictly speaking an e-commerce example, of course, because we're both service providers, at least in this context. But nevertheless, I think 2 things. One, I can say that there's a wonderful thing that can happen, which is everyone has gaps in their funnel. Like, I'm not an email expert. I believe in it. I could probably coach someone in the basics, but if I wanted somebody to go super advanced, I've got 2 or 3 people, and then you're now maybe, another person in the armor. I can go, you know what, Jessica would be amazing for you, actually. Why don't you talk about that to her? Go see her, because it's not something I can really hand on heart speak to, and I would say that. And equally, you might say, you know what, I can tell you about the basics of Facebook ads, but I'm not a whiz kid with it. No, there's a guy who does it all the time. So then you've actually got you're filling in the gaps in each other's audience's needs without stepping on each other's toes. And if you choose well, I have to say it is a beautiful thing. I also wanted to just say that you've absolutely nailed the e-commerce sellers I know. They want to hide behind their logo. I don't know why that is. A lot of them are really proud of their business and they talk about it all the time to everyone who listen, but they don't kind of want to be associated with it for their audience, which I just find odd. And I guess it's a kind of hangover from the sort of impersonality of Amazon, right? You can kind of do that on Amazon because it's all about keywords. Yeah. And nobody kind of knows you have a real brand. I guess once you've got your own direct-to-consumer site or an email series, I guess it comes the opposite, right? Tell me a bit more about that. What's going on mentally, do you think? Why do people hide behind their logo, and how do they get away from that mentality?
Yeah, look, so a couple of years ago, I was going to start a subscription box. And I did not want to be the face of the brand. I was not comfortable on video. I wasn't going to show up live on social media, all of that stuff. That business never even got off the ground until I randomly met someone on Instagram who was already a bit of an influencer and was comfortable doing that. So I was like, we ended up partnering up, and I was like, this is perfect because she can be the face of the brand and I can just hide in the back and do all those things, right? Then I became a service provider. Well, can't hide behind my logo for that, right? Because if people are going to buy my services, it's because they're going to invest in me. I need to show my face. So my point of telling you that is I get it. I've been there, but I have also seen the magic that comes with showing your face. And I did this like intensive one-on-one with a business coach when I was first starting this business, because I was just felt like a fish out of, like, I sell product, not services. Like, it was really awkward for me. And she just said, like, don't let your drama get in the way of your dreams. And if that means I have to show my face, then I'm going to show my face. And it has been a game changer, as it has been for many of the clients that I work with. So I am not a like woo woo warm and fuzzy. I'm like, put on your big girl or big boy panties and just do it, because it's going to get you the result that you want from your business. And it's going to go so much faster. Like, that's how you fast track organic, is you show your face.
I love it. By the way, I love your kind of personal brand, which is so clearly, it's like kind of New York reality check in LA. Because like
Yeah.
LA is so full of woo-woo. Because I get people from California on the podcast. It's like a different country. There's America, where people are generally more optimistic than us cynical Brits. And then there's California, where people just say, hey, I'm stoked to be on your podcast. I'm like, we just met. How can you be stoked? But they are, and they kind of genuinely are, and I kind of find it sweet. But you're kind of like the reality check, like, put your big boy pants on and get out in front of that video camera.
Yeah.
You know what? I have to say, you got to be right. I mean, I've had, frankly, because of being on video and in people's earbuds for 5 years, I've frankly earned myself, engagements to be keynote speakers at some big conferences and stuff that I don't think I necessarily deserve in terms of my personal expertise. I know people who know more than me about the topics I've spoken about. I mean, I think I bring in some value. I don't think I'm a complete fraud, but the fact that I'm out there at the time just builds authority. It's just one of those human things.
Yeah.
Like, if you watch somebody on a stage, if you listen to them on what feels like a radio program to me when I'm listening to a podcast,
Yep.
or watch them on what looks a bit like telly, i.e. a YouTube channel,
Yeah.
it does build some kind of authority. Yeah, if you've got 5 subscribers, not as much as if you've got 5 million, but it's just a thing. And I guess I'm very, very familiar with that, and I'm comfortable, luckily. But, you're incredibly articulate. You're an example of somebody who, if you hadn't got on camera, for those who really only consume content via YouTube as opposed to via podcast, for example, they'd never come across you. That would waste your content, right? You lost sound. Okay. This is the downside, of course, of live. And here we are again. Excellent. I knew I was just rabbiting on about how wonderful it is to actually get out in front of the camera. So tell me a bit more about the SEO thing, because obviously waiting a long time doesn't sound very attractive, but on the other hand, the wins are big. I mean, is that really a thing? It always feels like a sort of Jam Tomorrow promise to me somehow, if that's a reference you can relate to.
I do. I want to make one more note about the face, showing your face is
Please.
People buy from people, right? And if we learned anything in 2020, which I got to tell you, I'm so sick of talking about, but it's so true, is people do buy from people. They want to support smaller businesses. So let them know that that's what they're doing. So I just wanted to throw that in there, and, put as much of yourself in the business as you are comfortable, and then just do like a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Okay. SEO. Yes, waiting totally sucks. But as long as you are doing it well, and you're all white hat, and you're not trying to create content for Google, you're creating content for the user, it's going to future proof you, right? So when the algorithm changes on social media and nobody sees your posts unless you pay for them, you are still getting that organic traffic. Here's the thing. Google, all they want to do is get the user to the best result as fast as they can. That's all Google's trying to do, right? Create a really great user experience. So if you can partner with Google to help them do that, you are going to win big over the long term. And here's the thing. If you're trying to get in, if you're like I don't know if there's a term for this, but essentially you just kind of ride the wave of whatever the popular product is right now, then SEO is probably not the right strategy for you, right? You're just going to want to go paid ads because you got to strike while the iron is hot and like get as many sales on that product as you can. But if you are looking to build a long-term sustainable business and brand, SEO is going to always be there for you, working for you. So it is really important. And I know that it sounds like this big, scary word to a lot of people, and they kind of don't understand it and don't know what they're supposed to do. And, there's a lot of crazy technical stuff you can do. And you're going to hear all the super, super big guys talk about that. But that doesn't mean that you as a smaller business can't benefit, right? I have a client, worked with her. It's probably about a year and a half ago now. She started out on Etsy. She started her own Shopify store. It was taking a while to build up Shopify. And we worked on SEO together. Now, she'd been in business for a while, so we started seeing results in like the first 3 months. It was really quick. But I just went and peeked in her Google Search Console the other day. She is now ranking on page 1 for 12 non-branded keywords that are all related to her number 1 best-selling product. I mean, how do you not optimize for that? Like, how do you not try? Because the payoff is so, so good. And her organic traffic has more than doubled, as has her organic revenue.
Yeah, I like it. I guess all I can say is that I keep hearing sort of stories a bit like this. I got a friend of mine, Ashley Pierce, who's a member of the mastermind, also these days working on SEO for people as well. And he's at, may as well give him a shout out as well at the end of the show. But I just think, yeah, the payoff is there. It's just like anything else. If you've got the patience and if you're in it for the long term, I guess you just, you just got to be willing to do it. SEO is something I kind of feel really massively guilty about because I feel like I should be good at it because it's basically words based and I've been bad at it. The only thing I've moderately been good at is email marketing, and I guess it's just a lot smaller of a fight to me to write an email than to write a really great blog post.
For sure.
But there's a number of wake-up calls for me in here that we ought to just touch on the paid thing. Obviously, that's kind of how long is a piece of string, but just in our sort of overview of a piece before we wrap up this segment, tell us about the simplest version of paid strategies. You've already hinted if you've got more money than time, you should be looking at it. Also, that if you are trying to ride a wave that's going to be over soon, you ought to be using it. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. And there's 2 different versions of paid. And I think when people hear, paid ads, they immediately think Facebook and Instagram. And not that those are inherently bad. They can definitely work. But don't forget about search advertising, right? Like those are people who literally type in your product or the problem they're trying to solve that your product solves. And so those are much more qualified buyers than interrupting someone's scroll experience when they are, I don't know, looking at, family photos or listening to people rant on Facebook. So think of both of those. And, for some businesses, one might be better than the other, right? If you don't have a product that people are searching for, then maybe, Google Bing ads are not going to be great for you. But also think about remarketing as well. So this is where I recommend people actually start because it's the cheapest traffic, right? You're just going to get the cheapest conversions of people who have already visited your site, who have already landed on your Facebook page or your Instagram or whatever it is, wherever you're hanging out. Maybe people who are already on your email list, and use that remarketing to bring them back. I mean, look, the average e-com conversion rate, if you've got, a wider assortment of product, is only 1 to 3%. If you're like a 1, 2, 3, 6 product store, maybe you have a 4 or 5% conversion rate because it's much more targeted, right? But typical e-com is 1 to 3%. You need a lot of people to make any money, right? So they're not all going to buy the first time they come to you. So using that remarketing, which you can, do through Facebook and through Google, Well, we'll see how that all kind of changes. But for right now, you still can. And that's going to be really cheap traffic. So get started there. And, I personally don't do Facebook ads. I have someone that I kind of pass all my clients to that we work really closely together. But you kind of really need to think about your business and where you're at. And, some people they kind of create like this funnel through ads where they're like growing the know, like, and trust with some engagement ads to cold audiences. You're just trying to get them to your website that first time. So then you can remarket to them to get the conversion. So like it's faster, but it's not always easy. It's not a magic bullet, right? Like I said earlier, it's going to amplify what already is or isn't working in your business, good or bad. So really focus on the customer and giving them what they need and want when they need and want it. And that is no matter what kind of marketing you're doing. So that would be my initial 2 cents on that.
Excellent. Some very good advice there. And I think, not a magic bullet. And also, you've mentioned a couple of times that thing that it just amplifies what's going on. I think Bill Gates said something like, technology or indeed a team will just amplify. So if you've got a mess, you'll get an amplified mess. And if you've got a good orderly business, you get an amplified order. So I do think that there is some truth in the fact that a lot of marketing will communicate, but unfortunately what it sometimes communicate, and I'm sure that I've done this and will probably do it again, is communicate your lack of vision and your chaos. That people will quite clearly go, these guys are a disaster, I'm not going to buy from them. So I guess, you got to get your house in order, and we're going to talk about the customer journey in the next episode, but I guess you've already kind of teed that up very well. Give them what they want when they need it, rather than kind of forcing them through a funnel because they should know what they're supposed to do at this point, rather than starting from them, I guess, which is that's a whole different conversation in a way, because that's that requires looking at really who the ideal customer is and their journey. But for the moment, fascinating thoughts, love some wonderful takeaways for me as well. And having had a lot of these conversations, that's a good sign that some good value bombs are dropping, as they say in California.
Oh geez.
Yeah, value bombs. They have a certain language. Internet marketers in California just have a certain way of living. Everything's stoked, and their value bombs dropping, and it makes me laugh. But anyway,
well,
there are
I'm
value bombs
from here. Don't group me in with those.
I know, man. I'm just teasing you because I can tell you, so not like that. So tell us, if people want to hear a bit more from you. I know you got a lead magnet, as all good email list builders should have. Tell us a bit about the lead magnet if people want to download that.
So I have a free resource center. It's literally every freebie I've ever created. I used to set them up all separately for my podcast episodes so I could see, which one was getting the most traction. And then I decided that was too much work, and I just put them all in one place. So you can get access to that at ecommercebadassery.com/collective.
Amazing. Yeah, by the way, I've done that. It's one of those things where I did actually at least take action. I heard on various podcasts from various marketers I respected, you should have some kind of tailored download for each and every episode. So I tried it for about 10 and then went crazy and went, this is not sustainable. So I've been on that journey as well, but at least we as the audience get to benefit from that. So ecommercebadassery.com/collective, your free resource library. Give a bit of a taste of what people can get there.
Yeah, so you'll find guides for finding your ideal customer if you don't know who that is, figuring out where you should spend your time in marketing new or returning customers. There's content brainstorm worksheets. There's a ton of stuff in there.
Yeah, that sounds like great stuff. Figure out where to spend your time. By the way, that's one of the takeaways today, is that you're not focusing either or, but both and. It's not either new customers or existing ones, but a sort of balance between that you can shift, but never goes too far one direction or the other. Really, really wise advice. So listen, we're going to formally end this podcast here. If you're listening live, we're going to stick around, so don't disappear. But for the moment, Jessica, thank you very, very much for sharing your wisdom. Great to hear it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Michael. This was so much fun.
Good. And if you're watching live, seems very artificial because we're about to get into the next podcast. Assuming that you're good to stick around, Jessica, for a bit. We're going to talk about the
Yes.
ideal customer, which is also another excellent topic. Do you need to grab a glass of water or anything, or are you good?
I do actually. I was going to
Excellent.
say, do I have a
Yep,
minute?
you do. Yeah, let me just chat to the
Awesome. I
audience.
will be
I'll
right
mute
back.
you and let you go and do that. No worries. Well then, folks, if you're listening live, do put any comments, any questions you got in there. Do put any questions you have for Jessica about email marketing in the comments, or indeed in about customer avatar, which is what we're going to talk about next. As you may have gathered, I'm more my comfort zone recording podcasts away from a live audience on Zoom, and then I generally go live later. So I'm not very good at the whole social media thing. Well, actually, that's a bit too self-effacing. I guess I'm just not very slick with it yet. I know that some of my friends in the e-commerce space are good at mass producing very good live interviews, but we do get some great guests, I think, on the podcast. Hope you're enjoying this. I'm really loving the stuff I'm getting from Jessica. Just a quick recap of what I think were some of the points for me that really stood out from the first episode. So email building, a lot of content there. First of all, there's a misconception that Shopify is a marketplace. The number one job is to drive traffic. And that's what we're paying for on Amazon. Lest we forget, those of us who are on Amazon and very Amazon focused, let's not bitch too strongly about the fees. Yes, they are something that eats into our margins, but they're there for a reason. One of the big mistakes, not actually emailing people, pretty basic, but once you built a list, and I've done that in the past. I remember when I've got a bunch of people off Amazon with a lot of work with inserts and then just didn't email them. That's a classic error. How to get the email? You've got to give something valuable in exchange. The quiz, of course, is the wonderful exchange that you can give. That's worked really well. PDF or educational content. And then the numbers game thing that we need to consistently drive traffic. And really the two big things that Jessica's a big fan of are really the SEO and the whole collaboration, which of course we are hopefully being examples of as people here right now. We are collaborating away. Something that I think in the information marketing space like this is used all the time, but not in the product space. For some reason, collaboration just isn't used in the same way, and I don't know why that is. So that's definitely a great tip. Right then, so Jessica, I've just been summarizing away what we've been discussing in the first part. So if you're ready to rock and roll,
Sure am.
let's talk about ideal customer. So
yes.
I'm going to do my whole spiel and just welcome you back because it saves editing it in afterwards, which just feels artificial. So let's get started. Ladles and Jenna Spoons, boys and girls, welcome back to the 10K Collective podcast, the place to be for 6, 7 and 8 figure Amazon sellers. We are talking with Jessica Tortillo Costa of E-commerce Badassery, and Jessica is an e-commerce and email marketing strategist for scrappy entrepreneurs. And as you put it to me before the show, I just want to relay this because I think it's great. You've got to be prepared to do the work. Don't turn up expecting magic answers. And I'm kind of the same, by the way. If you want magic answers and you want to do no work and go and sit on the beach in Thailand, then go sit on the beach, but don't expect to make any money. So, Jessica, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm excited for round 2.
Me too. I've just got to say, by the way, I literally had a client once who kind of drank the Kool-Aid and literally set up a business with, I think, one product and then went off to a beach in Thailand with her boyfriend. Needless to say, it didn't end well. So don't do this at home, folks. Don't believe the guys with the Lambos. So ideal customer, obviously really important. So we are going to talk about this whole thing. What does this really matter, first of all? I mean, do we really need to go to all the trouble? Can't we just follow the keywords that we know on Amazon and maybe Google Analytics data, and then that's it?
I mean, you could, right? I mean, if that's been working for you. But if you find yourself unsure of where to go, what to do next, what kind of content should I create, what social media platform should I be on, then it's probably because you don't know who you're trying to talk to. And if you've never heard this before, like if you're trying to talk to everyone, you're talking to no one. And this can be really detrimental because and look, I'm not saying you have to have one individual person that you're speaking to, right? And that you're only ever going to sell to them. It's not really about that. It's more about just understanding what matters to your customer, what is going to get them to buy, so that you can create content to do that. And that's your product descriptions, the emails you write, the posts you put on social, even just the decisions you make about your packaging, um, and what platforms you're going to sell on. Maybe your customer isn't even on Amazon, right? Maybe the person who wants your product isn't even on Amazon. So it's really like the foundation and the base for every business decision you make, and that's one of the main reasons why I think it's so important.
Amazing. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I like that quote. If you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. Nice tweetable right there. So let's talk about, I guess there's a couple of different ways of dividing this traditionally, right? Demographics, psychographics. I guess you've all heard the names. So what are your understandings of these? But more importantly, why do they matter? And then I would guess if it does matter, we've got to get into how do we do it. But let's start with definitions first.
Yeah, for sure. So demographics are, that's just like the tangible stuff that's really easy to identify: age, gender, where they live, how much money they make, that sort of thing, right? We all know what those are. And they matter to an extent, and they can really help you kind of position your brand a little bit. But what's more important is actually the psychographics. And this is like, who are these people at their core? Like, really deep down, take the age, the gender, the location out of it. Who are they at their core? What really matters to them? What makes them tick? What is important to them? And I just started working with a new client. She has an apparel brand, and her entire brand ethos is inclusivity. So when I gave her this worksheet, she was struggling to really like, well, I'm not for one person. I really am for everyone, because of, the inclusivity and really standing up for what you believe in and all that good stuff. And I said, okay, so yes, it's for everyone, but there is a thread that connects those people really deep down. That's what we're trying to get to. So for them and her group, it is inclusivity, diversity, all of that stuff, right? That is the thread that binds them together beyond how old they are, what they look like, where they live, and how much money they have. So that's really the difference between the two. And people buy with emotion and justify with logic. So if you can reach them on an emotional level through that understanding of who they are and what makes them tick, then you're winning, right? I don't buy like a cat water fountain because I think it's cool. I buy it because I know that it's going to help me take better care of my cat, right? Because he was dehydrated, because he wasn't drinking enough. That's why I bought it, not because it has like this really actually not visually appealing daisy on the top of it. Doesn't really go with my decor, right? But it was the best one for what he needed.
Yeah, and by the way, somebody else might buy it a very different shaped thing that does the exact same job, but because it fits their decor, because for them their decor is important. So
Yeah.
yeah, I by the way, I love that thing about your client. It's both inclusivity is it's interesting that for her she was struggling because she thought that being targeted meant excluding certain demographics, and
Mhm.
actually, I guess psychographically, you could say that in both of our countries, in the UK and US, and indeed anywhere else on the planet, there are people who are more inclusive in their mindset in terms of, I don't know, gender
Right.
orientation, ethnicity, location, whatever. And then there are those who really like to be very tribal in terms of, any of those above. That they're only interested in people that go to the same sort of church as them or something like that. And those
Right.
people would have a very different sort of psychographic. So weirdly enough, being inclusive is kind of exclusive in the sense that a lot of people aren't inclusive and don't want to be. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it's interesting, isn't it, how everyone thinks that there's this great urge that a lot of us have that we want our products to be for everyone, and it's weird how how hard it is to persuade people not to do that. And the same as a coach or a consultant, I find myself doing the same thing. I'm prizing my hands off the dead body of the idea of being an Amazon consultant, because that's way too general. And yet I still find it hard to give up. So I think in the service and the product industry, it's just one of those mental things, isn't it? I mean, what's your advice for somebody who's struggling to give up the idea of these phantom customers that could all be theirs, and to really focus in on a target customer?
Because it's going to make all of your decision making easier. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to like get those people in the peripheral. I can never pronounce that word. I should just really take it out of my vocab. But it doesn't mean that those people aren't going to find you. It just means that you're not going to try and have 12 different messages all the time. I mean, even in that previous day job that we talked about on the other episode, we had a lot of different customer avatars, right? And they were all buying our product for different reasons. And so we had to reach them differently. And I did all the email for that. So it could be a lot of work, to do that, because what would make, person A buy this product is different than why person B would. And if I told them, like if I gave person B the message for person A, it could potentially actually keep them from buying it. Like it would prevent them from buying it. So it's hard to do that. And so the more you can kind of focus that in, it's just going to make your life easier. And it's going to make your message more impactful, because that person is going to read it and be like, how did they know? Like, they get me. How did they know that this was like the exact problem I had, and this is the exact product I need to solve the problem that I have? Like when you've done that, like you've got your customer.
Amen to that. I love it. I mean, again, it comes down to that old cliche, the riches are in the niches, which I think everybody seems to think that means, by the way, Americans, it's not pronounced niche. I'm just saying it's niche. But anyway, it rhymes, so I have to use it because Americans like that.
I say niche too.
I say niche. Thank you. It's a French word. I'm just saying. But anyway, the riches are in those niches or niches. And here's the point. Everybody seems to think that means narrow keyword targeting, and they forget about the person element of it. And especially on Amazon, you could kind of do that. And I guess we're emerging, blinking into the sunlight when you're moving towards your own direct consumer marketing and actually going, oh yeah, people, I'm going to have to actually understand them. I love the fact that you've just flagged that it's just so knackering and to so tiring to have multiple different avatars. And I've kind of experienced that to a degree with the amazing FBA and 10K Collective brands, indeed, having basically two brands with different avatars right behind my head. So I'm an example of what not to do to some degree, but you're so right. The funny thing about what you were saying about your client who's so obsessed with inclusivity is that the irony is that if you use the word inclusivity to some grumpy, I'm going to say terribly biased things now, but I'm a white guy, so I can probably say a grumpy old white man and get away with it. They're probably going to just see, oh, that's so millennial, this is so rubbish, why try and be inclusive? You'd actually turn that person off. So ironically, using the word inclusivity is going to turn a bunch of people away from your brand. I'm just saying, Jessica's client, whoever you're out there, I'm sorry to break it to you, you're going to put somebody off somehow. And you're so right.
It
is more than okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like even in my own, for e-commerce badassery, I curse a lot. It's just how I talk. Always been that way. It's even in my podcast intro, and if someone doesn't like that or it puts them off, like that's okay, because you know what? They're probably not going to enjoy working with me anyway, and they're never going to become my customer. So I don't care. Right. And so don't get caught up in that. Same thing for her, right? If people are not into inclusivity, right, they're probably not going to like any of her product, because her product is really about giving those people a voice and wearing it on their t-shirt. So they're probably never going to buy anything from her anyway. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And more than that, I would just say that one of the important things, if you're talking about, I suppose, tribe building or tribal identity, and I guess we're dealing with those kinds of things around the edges. I guess one of the ways a tribe defines itself is what it isn't. In other words, you've got to have an enemy, and without becoming incredibly negative and ending up Facebook ranting, I guess most political parties, most football teams, I don't really know the American football thing, but soccer teams, as you would call it in the UK, they're pretty tribal in that way. They have clear enemies, and that helps them
Yes.
define their identity. And I'm not saying that's a positive thing to overemphasize, but it's just the reality, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts around that? Should we kind of call out things that we hate? Should we go as far as that in our email marketing or our social media, or do you think you've got to keep it positive? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think, you show up at who you are, and I say stay with the positive personally. Um, and just really show up as who you are and what you stand for. You will naturally attract the people who want what you have to sell, and you will repel the people who don't. And I don't think it has to get any more complicated than that. And in terms of just like your sports reference, this was years ago. Like I said, I'm from New York. I went to a concert in Boston, and my friend was wearing a Yankees hat. These are big rivals, and he got jumped like at that concert. So people get really into that stuff, which I think is a little ridiculous, to be honest. Like, let's chill out. Uh, but I don't think you need to kind of go to those extremes, but just like show up as who you are and stand up for what you believe in and draw your lines in the sand, and the right people will find you.
Excellent. So we don't need to be complicated. We just need to be, I suppose, willing to make a decision by the sound of it, I guess it's about.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the psychologically hard bit, but the simple bit by the same token. I guess a lot of us have heard this. So now, how do we find out about our customers? Because obviously one of the things Amazon does, as you mentioned in the last episode, is that they keep everything for themselves. Amazon's getting harder and harder to prize any data out of them about our customers at all. They're Amazon's customers as far as they're concerned. So how do we start to gather this information if we're 100% on Amazon, and how do we start to get off Amazon as we're sort of building our own brand outside the Amazon space?
Yeah. On Amazon, it's the reviews. Go look at I mean, I've never seen such in-depth reviews as people write on Amazon. And if I'm researching like a particular product or how to position something, even if I'm not selling it on Amazon, I still go to Amazon to find out what people didn't like about it. What did they like about it? How did it make them feel? Because they're going to tell you all of it. And then you can just take that language, right? All the words that customer used, and put it back into your product descriptions, put it in your marketing copy, just speak their words right back to them. So that is the first place I would go 100%. And that's whether you're on or off of Amazon. The nice thing is if you are on your own D2C website, you actually have direct contact with these people, right? So you can do that through a survey, or depending upon how big your business is, get on the phone with a couple of them. I have an email friend. She had she, it was like an apparel and accessory store for cat ladies. And so she had, like a cat shaped handbag and stuff like that. And in the beginning, she just got on the phone with, it was like 5 or 10 of her customers. And they just wanted to be seen and heard and not judged and made fun of. Right. And so she gave that to them, and then they were loyal to her. So it kind of depends where you're at in your journey. Right. But even if you are a big business, why can't you just pick 10 of your VIPs? Maybe you throw them a gift card to your store or something like that, and just get on a call with them and ask them, why do you shop with us? What keeps you coming back? What else do
Yeah.
you want to see?
I
Yeah.
love it. Why do you shop with us? Let me just make some notes here. Why do you shop with us? What do you want to see? I mean, yeah, I mean, I love this. I'm always begging people to get people on a Zoom call these days, or a phone call. It doesn't really matter what the medium is, but
Yeah.
it's surprising how resistant people are. I've been working with this poor guy who, was supposed to be starting a business, and frankly, to admit one failure on air, he hasn't really got started, and he's kind of drifted away after a few months. And he did say, like, it's on me, not you. And I said, well, that's very sweet. I mean, I suppose I wanted to get him a result, but one of the things he was resistant about was just talking to people he knows about his products online. And this was a pre-selling thing, but even when you got sales, it seems I sense the same resistance. Again, how do we how do we get over that internal resistance, or how do we make it practical? Because I can hear people out there go, yeah, but Mike, you can't phone people up, or how do we deal with the head trash around that, or the practical barriers?
Yeah. I mean, look, Some people, I will admit, I don't really get on the phone. Like, I do a lot of Zoom calls with clients and things like that, but I don't like call people on the phone. I understand that. I think that's just the nature of the world, the digital world that we live in now. I used to be on the phone for hours. Now, if I have to call like a restaurant to order delivery, I'm like, no, okay, wait, I can't like do it online or through an app. No, I'm good. So I understand that. So how else, right, can you create that experience without having to get on the phone? Send them a survey. People love to talk about themselves. Like, seriously, people love to talk about themselves. Everyone just wants to be seen and heard in this world. So if you can give them a way to do that, they love giving their opinions. Give them, a discount off of their next purchase, or maybe you give them like a little GWP or something like that. Keep it related to your business. You should have better margins there. And just let them tell you, but really, like, sit down and think about, what do I really need to know from them, and make sure you're crafting questions that are really going to give you the answers that you're looking for. And go back to those reviews, look at your competitor reviews. What are people saying on not only the websites, but just on social media, right? Just listening to what people are talking about. You're going to find your answers there. They're out there. We just have to go get them.
Yeah, you're right. And I guess that there are more ways to do things than a phone call or Zoom call, which does feel like a big imposition now. It's very funny what you're saying. And I guess that, yeah, I don't mind phoning a restaurant, but there are certain things like the bank. I just totally resist to calling a bank if there isn't an app, because I know that all's going to happen is I'll phone them up and then they'll go on the internet. I'm like, can we cut the middleman out here? And I'm just going to go straight to the internet. And I'm really disappointed when I have to phone a bank. So I totally hear what you're saying in a different context. And yeah, there are modern ways of doing it. You're right. I mean, I think servers can work well. I had another client who did get a product off the ground recently, and I suggested him getting Zoom calls, and he basically structured things into a survey in the same sort of structure we were discussing, because he was a bit busy to get on Zoom calls at that point, and it worked really well actually as well. Put it around a bunch of friends. So yeah, Google is pretty good for that. I think you've got any Jot forms pretty good. In fact, the technology's there, isn't it? We don't need to fuss about that. I'm about to go down a rabbit hole with the tools, but I refuse to because they're easy. Google Forms
Yeah.
is free. Google Forms is great if you can't think what else to do. I love Jot form. I'm also a fan of Airtable, but getting down rabbit holes there. So look, we ought to let you go and get on with life as we know it down in LA, and go and enjoy some of that warmth. Or maybe you need to sit in the shade with a cool drink if it's too hot there.
Yeah.
I'd love to have that problem. But what question should I have asked you that I haven't asked you already? What do we need to know?
Oh, geez. Let's see. In relation to the ideal customer, let's
Yes.
see. What do we want to know? What's really important? It's I'm just going to make the statement, right? Because I don't know how to frame it as a question. It's probably, what are the mistakes that people make, right?
Yeah.
Your ideal customer, right? And when I say, like, I'm looking at it as like you have this worksheet with all the information on it. It is not a one and done thing, right? You don't create this one time at the beginning of your business and then that's what you have forever. It's a living, breathing document that you are going to update as you have more data. I like to revisit it every 6-ish months. Maybe you could do it quarterly as well, depending upon how. I think the newer you are, the more often you do it, right? Because the more new data that you're getting, because you're still learning and trying to understand, because who you thought your customer was, it might be different, right? Maybe you thought you were like targeting this younger person, who cared about, I don't know, whatever young people care about. I feel like I'm not young anymore, but I'm not quite old. I'm somewhere in the middle. It's a weird place to be. Anyway, so maybe you thought you were targeting these young people, but it turned out it's actually an older demographic who has different priorities in their life, who's actually gravitating towards it. And so they care about different things. You want to talk about different things. So just the short story is, it's not a one and done. It's a living, breathing thing. You want to check in on it regularly based on the data you have. what you've learned, and the more feedback you get from your own customers, right? In the beginning, you're just kind of guessing a little bit. Maybe you're looking at your competitors and things like that. But the more first party data you get, the more refined that ideal customer is going to be, and the more effective you can be in your decision making. So always check back.
Amazing. I'm so glad I asked that question. By the way, somebody just, like all good things, stolen/learnt or modeled is the polite version, that somebody said to me that great question to ask is what question should I have asked? And I just chucked that in now. And it always makes the breast go, ooh, and you always get interesting answers. So by the way, the power of good questions is a kind of overarching thing that I'm a fan of. And I love this. It's not one and done. And as you say, you're so totally right. I mean, I guess that this is great because as soon as you say it, this is the mark of good wisdom. As soon as somebody said it, it seems obvious, but I hadn't thought of it before at all, which is just great. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it, that we create a product and we think we know where we're aiming at, and then everything changes. And it's very easy to kind of just fire and forget. You're totally right about that. So brilliant feedback. Yeah, great stuff generally. Just really getting lots and lots of wisdom. I've been making notes away here. Fortunately, we've got some written documentation from you as well. So I know you've got a lead magnet for us to download at ecommercebadassery.com/collective. To tell us a tiny bit about what we can get from that.
Yeah, this is my free resource library. So I started creating freebies for all of my individual podcast episodes and realized this was not a good use of my time. So I put all of my freebies in one place, and any new freebie will automatically go in there. So you will find a worksheet to actually help you figure out who your ideal customer is. There are worksheets to help you brainstorm content to get started with SEO on your own website. There's, like I said, tons of stuff in there. If you are new to business or maybe new to your own website, right? That's just a different animal than being on Amazon. It's a really great place to start.
Amazing, and I really must give you a chance. As my bad, I didn't do this at the end of the last episode, but I promise I'll pop something in there to tell people. Tell us what it is you do for e-commerce sellers if they want to approach you and work with you one-to-one.
Yeah, for
one to
sure.
many.
Definitely. So I kind of have two main tracks that I work with people on. One of them is email. That's really how I started this business, was getting all your email automations set up for you, teaching you how to maybe use Klaviyo, because that's my favorite platform. I don't do like ongoing maintenance. I'd have to build an agency for that. And I just really enjoy being one-on-one. So for people who want to do it in-house, but just like need that get started foundation, I'm your girl for that. And then I also have ongoing, just like high level e-commerce consulting, helping you kind of clear the weeds, like what makes sense for your business right now. I think a lot of the times we can hear a lot of general information, right? That, yeah, could be cool for your business long term, right? But like, how do you make money right now? How do you prioritize where to focus your time? Because unless you have a big team, you can't do it all, my friend. So I like to kind of come in and just say like, hey, this is what makes sense for you and your brand, and help you figure out your best next steps.
Yeah, and by the way, such a great, simple in a way for somebody who's been there and done it, like you clearly have, but also massive value. It's just not there's so much how to do stuff. It's like, what should I do next on my smorgasbord of 30 possible things? I've listened to too many podcasts like this one. I'm guilty of putting that content out there, of course. Yeah, that's a totally great value use of a consulting expert.
Yeah.
And so that totally makes sense. And by the way, Klaviyo, yeah, some of the smartest people I know in this space are really big on Klaviyo. It's a great choice of platform. Not one I've personally used yet, but I'm looking forward to maybe getting my sink into it at some point. Yeah, I hear amazing things from various people who've used it to big effect. But anyway, it's a great platform choice as well. So yeah, if anyone wants to get hold of you, presumably just go to ecommercebadassery.com and start there. 2 M's for e-commerce and 2 S's for badassery.
Yes.
Ecommercebadassery.com. That is where Jessica hangs out on the web. Apart from, I presume, all the socials. So look, Jessica, we must let you get back to consulting and your cat, also a big cat fan here. So my kind of person that you got to talk about psychographics, really important, isn't it? Dog or cat people. Just remains for me to say thank you so much for taking so much time to give us so much masses and masses of value, and really a big thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was awesome to be here. I just love chatting with you.
Thank you. Me too.